Hi folks, welcome to the A Minute to Midnight Show. This is Tony coming to you from New Zealand. Please make sure you subscribe to us at aminutomidnight.com, and we have a BitChute, Rumble, YouTube and Apple Podcast channels as well, but aminutomidnight.com is our primary website. And we do run A Minute to Midnight 100% by donations. It's been pretty slow of late. We do appreciate anybody that does donate, and if you want to help with A Minute to Midnight and help us out to keep it running, you can donate at aminutomidnight.com. So donations are always much appreciated, and so is liking and also sharing our videos. Get them out to other people as well by sharing them. That's much appreciated. And today I have with me on the show John Haller, frequent guest on the show, as I'm sure you're all well and truly aware. And John's always got a lot of very interesting insights to share with us. So welcome back today, John.
Good to be back with you, Tony.
We were talking off air. There's a multitude of things where we could go to, but I'll let you start and take us in some direction.
Well, there's a lot of issues. When I talk about Bible prophecy, sort of my stock part of my introduction is that there's a convergence of all these things that are going on that I think are indicative of the times in which we live. And also acceleration. So it does seem like things are happening very, very quickly. As I followed things over the summer and talked, every week I get ready my talk, and I think I can keep this one to 45 minutes, and I'm able to keep each part of it to 45 minutes, but it's usually hour and a half, hour 45 minutes long, just because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
That's happening. So let me just I think the first thing I'd like to talk about, and I think it kind of ties into technology, it ties into control, artificial intelligence, the growth of tech intrusion into our lives, control, that sort of thing. And that's what's going on in the UK. The UK has a problem with immigration, and the immigration is usually coming from Islamic countries. It's by and large military-age males that are coming. It's very similar to the immigration coming into the United States. And I was listening to some news shows in the UK with conservative commentators who are upset about what's going on with the number of people coming in. And they talked about that, like, last month there were 5,000 people that came into the UK by my immigration. But the United States, that number is like, a lot of people think it's 1 million people a month that have been coming in. And I don't understand it. So I'll talk about immigration in just a moment, because there's also another very good article from a left-wing publication talking about, hey, what's going on? Every now and then they wake up and see what's going on. But in the UK, there have been problems over the last 10, 15 years with rape gangs among these members of a certain Middle Eastern-based religion, grooming gangs, grooming young girls and that type of thing. I know when I was in the UK 5 years ago, the people that we were riding with, I spoke up in the Central Highlands of the UK, up near Derby, and then some friends drove us down to London for about a week. And I'd never been to London before. And as we're driving in, they sort of jokingly said, "Yeah, now we're in London and it's time to play our favorite game. Can you spot a real Englishman?" And, it sounds kind of racist a little bit, but it's not. It's actually very true. I mean, as you're walking around, it's very Middle Eastern in parts of London. And this is not like way out in the suburbs of London. I'm talking about, we stayed at a hotel, the Marriott Marble Arch. So 4 blocks down the street was Marble Arch and the famous free speech area of Speaker's Corner. And Tony, I'm telling you that the TV in the hotel we stayed in had 50 channels, and 10 of them were Arabic language. This is in the heart of London. I mean, right on the other side of Hyde Park is Buckingham Palace, for crying out loud. And as I walked around the immediate area around the hotel, it was Lebanese, Afghan, Iraqi. I didn't know Iraqi had sort of a food group that, you could make a restaurant out of. And that's just probably my own cultural ignorance. But, Persian, and Turkish, and then those big, the big water pipe bars that they have where they sit and smoke. Those were all over the place. That's all there was in that whole area of London. And it was kind of shocking. Well, there's been people on the right, mainly on the right of the political spectrum, have noticed this and they're concerned. And it's like here, it seems like all the jobs are going to the immigrants, and the ones that are here illegally. And the same thing's happening in the UK, and the people are concerned about it because it's affecting their livelihood and that sort of thing. It's affecting the culture of the area. And so there was a recent in Southport, England, there was a not stabbing. There were 3 young girls at a home that got their throats slit. They were like 6, 7, 8, 5, 7, and 8, I think. And it was a person of color who did it. The rumor spread that he was a Middle Eastern immigrant, but that's not exactly true. And immediately the press, this is the thing that's so amazing about this, is the press is like, they're like totally in on it. Like they build the narrative immediately. So I started seeing pictures. I read UK papers every day, at least 2 or 3, maybe 4. And they started putting pictures of this guy up, and he was in his schoolboy uniform when he was 12. But when he's arrested, he's like 17 or 18. And he doesn't look anything like he did when he was 12. But the narrative was to do this. And everybody got upset. So the people on the right started protesting. And some of them were very negative, and some of the protests, spun out of control into violence, which we all are against. But then the opposition, these Islamic groups, started marching down the street with axes and knives, and in a very threatening manner. So people on the right posted on social media. There was a guy, something F Allah, he said, and he posted that on social media. And even though this has really been going on less than 3 weeks, there are many people who've been arrested, tried, convicted, and are already serving time in prison, some of them as long as 4, 5, 6 years, for what they posted on social media.
Well, they were talking about extraditing people out of America that,
Yeah. So the police chief of London, and on Sky News, I think it was, came out. He's a chief in some section of London, I think. He came out and he said, well, and don't you think that you people in America, and really it was a shot across Elon Musk's bow to threaten Elon Musk, we'll come after, we'll indict you here, and then we'll come to America, and we'll have you extradited back here to serve your time. We fought kind of a big war here in America, so 200 and some years ago about that very issue. And first of all, most people would say, well, they can't do that because it's unconstitutional. We have a right of free speech here in America. They can't control things. But this has been a longstanding problem, particularly with the European Union and the tech companies. So, and then you also have the concern is if the elections go, and Kamala Harris, I call her Kamala Harris, gets elected as the president, do you think that the United States Department of Justice will step in and say, "Oh, no, you can't stop these Americans, or you can't extradite these Americans because we have a right of free speech here"? The Department of Justice will not step in and prevent that. The State Department will not step in and prevent that. And so it's a matter of some concern, and to the point where a lot of people that I know that post on social media have publicly stated they are never going to the UK ever again in their life. And what's happened over the years, that the EU has been very clever. Ursula von der Leyen and her ilk that run the EU, they've enacted these regulations. These regulations have been passed then in many countries. And what the regulations do, what these laws do, is they regulate the tech companies, and they tell the tech companies, if there's something posted and we don't like it and we tell you to take it down, you have to take it down, or we can fine you up to 3% of your company revenue. And so when you're talking about billions of dollars of revenue, you're talking about dozens and hundreds of millions of dollars of potential fines. And so what do the tech companies do? So the tech companies then treat every country in the world like it's governed by the EU law. So what the globalists have been able to do through one section of the world, in Europe's a significant section of the world in terms of GDP and everything, they're able to effectively control all of the internet postings in, say, in a place like America. And then and then they also do things where the United States has laws, or did have laws, about spying on its citizens. So what they do is there's sort of a gentleman's agreement. The CIA will agree with the MI6. You do the tech, the high-tech deep surveillance on our people, and we'll do it on your people, and then we'll share information. And so there's sort of this unwritten thing. So the people there's Tommy Robinson, who I believe is a committed Christian now, is based on everything that I've seen, at least. I mean, he had some rough times, but this guy's been put in prison and tortured for his views. And he was on vacation when all of this started. And so all the people said, "Oh, well, he instigated this and then fled the country." But they've come after people for just simple Facebook posts. There are also some fairly famous videos out there now rolling around that, particularly this one lady who stood outside an abortion clinic and bowed her head, and she's been arrested for praying. And she said, "I just bowed," and it was silent. She didn't say anything. Yeah. She just sort of assumed that, struck the pose, if you will. And she's been arrested, and they're threatening people all over the UK that if you do this, you're going to be arrested. The problem as an attorney, and I handled some, at least one really large white collar matter. It's not so much that you're innocent and you can prove that you're innocent. It will bankrupt you to do it. So in connection with the January 6th disputes, there were been a number of people that have pled guilty, including some lawyers that represented one of the candidates for president in that litigation. They've been disbarred. They've had their licenses suspended. They're going after John Eastman, who's probably one of the most important constitutional scholars in the United States of America, a Christian guy from California, and they've suspended his license. And and he's spent millions and millions and millions of dollars defending himself. And he's totally, so he's in his, I don't know, he's retirement age. He's probably close to my age, in his late 60s. He's totally eaten up all of his life savings that he was going to live on for the rest of his life, defending himself, and he's probably innocent. And ultimately, he probably will be exonerated, but the cost is enormous. So in the UK, this has been kind of a stunning thing because the wheels of justice grind pretty slowly here in America. But these people, they've considered it a national emergency. They've declared it a national emergency. So they're going after these people, and they've been convicted or pled guilty. And this thing's only been going on about 2.5 weeks. And as I said, some have been sentenced up to 6 years in prison. They've destroyed their lives over the fact that they oppose a certain religion, and they've posted about it. And they've said, even if you go to the protest, we'll find you. People wonder how that happens, but I was listening to a podcast that Tom Hughes, I think you're having on your program pretty soon, and Jeff Kinley. I think we're all doing a conference in California in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And Jeff just came back from London, and he said, and I can confirm this because I was over in the UK last year, Tony, you have no idea. There are cameras everywhere. I mean, look, there are cameras everywhere in the United States now. But in London, they estimate that the average person is photographed or filmed or recorded 300 times a day on average in London. And so, with the tech tools and AI and that type of thing to kind of analyze that, you have no hope. When I was up in Scotland, I was up in a little town way in the north of Scotland, up near Dornoch, and I went to a big store. Yeah, I probably shared this story before, but it still creeps me out. I went up to the counter to pay, the checkout counter, and it said, "Oh, you have to get your credit card approved." I think I was using an American Express Gold card, and so some guy came up and approved it. But I looked, and my picture of me was frozen on the screen. So I walked out of the store, I got to the front door, and I thought, I forgot to get water. So I went back, and it took me about 10 minutes, and I came back, and I went to the same checkout counter, but there had been people there. I had to wait for people to clear the area, and I walked up, and as I'm walking up, my picture appears on the checkout screen. So I'm sitting there thinking, like, I'm in the system already. And then as I drove from the north back down to Glasgow, there are cameras everywhere on the highway. I mean, this is out in the middle of nowhere,
right?
And they do average speed. It's just incredible. So they take the most restrictive laws, and then they apply it they get one big group of countries to do it, the tech companies or the globalists, whoever's behind it. And then everybody in the world has to comply with that strict standard, because the tech companies are going to say, well, we can't let things go here and then let things go here. And we have a platform, and people on the platform in England are going to see the same platform in Canada. We just can't divide it up like that. And there's some truth to that, but they're in control of everything, really everything.
As you're speaking, it's slightly a side issue, but it's connected. I notice, everywhere, say in the UK, for example, then you end up with Islamic people in city council positions and governmental positions and so on, or LGBTQ trans people and so on in these positions. And in New Zealand, we've just appointed our new human rights commissioner, who has the surname Rainbow and is connected with that community. So you can see, like, if anything comes up and it's a human rights issue, for example, in New Zealand, who's he going to side with? If it's a Christian versus an LGBTQ person with a difference of something, who's that person going to side with? And the same with people in a position in government if they are of that religion that you're talking about, and who are they going to side with when it comes to making laws or clamping down on people? So obviously the people that they're akin with, and this is how I think, and largely the globalists, whatever you want to call them, the illuminists behind the scene or whatever, they've made sure that they have these people in power, in countries all over the place. So like in America, you've got Levine, whatever is the health. So who are they going to be siding with? They're going to, the people that want, trans surgery and all of that. So the Christian, that are now considered old, we don't like you guys, you're old from the dark ages. We are not going to be the ones that generally the law sides with. And I think it's been deliberately done to get as many of these, what were once fringe groups, into the position now where they are the ones with the power. And so it's very clever because there'll always be backlash against those that don't follow their belief system. And that's largely us old fogies, Christians from the dark ages who believe in the Bible, which will soon be hate speech, no doubt, in many places. And I see this is the trend, and it's not looking good. And then you can't speak against that religion of Islam, but you can sure as heck speak against Christianity. And so I just see even in Lebanon now, here's Bilal saying, the day for the Christians is over in Lebanon, kind of thing. And so, bam, here we go.
You're 100% correct. And so one thing you wonder is how are they funding this? Now, my contention has been, at least here in the United States, after the 2008 financial crisis, there was a lot of government litigation. This was done under the Obama Justice Department, in Treasury and that type of thing, against the big banks for putting these loans together in these packages and selling them off to people as investments. So there were these big banks paid billions of dollars in settlements. I know because I got a lot of work out of that, the fallout from that financial stuff. That kind of kept that kept me busy for years. But where did all that money go? Nobody ever talks about where did all those billions of dollars go. And I think there's fairly good evidence. I think some investigative reporters have looked into this, and that money was laundered through different LLCs and companies and into left-wing NGOs that had been set up. And so they've now been funded with billions of dollars to do this. And the other point you made is you're exactly right. They get these people into positions of power. And how do they do that? I mean, how do you get, and look, the police chief or captain, whoever he was who was on the Sky News interview, the white guy. Okay, how do they get a guy there that thinks this way? And so I did a few podcasts with Mark Sutherland, who over the past couple of weeks. And what they have here, what they have in the UK now is what they call two-tier policing, two-tier prosecution. It's you're going to get prosecuted, you Christians who are speaking out against this thing, but these other people, that's fine, they get a pass. And you'll see them, and so a Christian will post like a derogatory comment about Allah, and he goes to jail. Okay, so maybe you shouldn't have posted it.
Yeah.
But then you see these other guys posting stuff against Christianity in the protests involving, let's see, where did they take place? They took place in D.C. I can't even remember why they took place in D.C., but they were defacing monuments. And they at the Union Station, the hotel there used to be owned by the Trump organization, they pasted, I think a replica of the Liberty Bell, they painted in red, Hamas is coming. Now, that seems to be sort of over the top, and I'm all for free speech. I'm not advocating free speech, but there is a line that gets crossed, but it's only a line, it seems, on one side of the ledger that anybody cares about. The other side is free to do everything. So we see, Tony, I was just listening to an interview with Dennis Prager today as I was coming home before we had this, and he had a guy on who was imprisoned about the January 6th thing. And he was talking, he's a Christian guy. And he said he's going to have litigation about it, but the prosecutors lied. They put him in solitary confinement. And he said, if I wasn't a Christian, I wouldn't have survived. Solitary confinement destroys your body, destroys your mind. And if you're not grounded in something, you're done.
Yeah.
And it's torture. And he was in there for months. And he's got enough guts to speak out. But I mean, how many people does this happen to that they don't have, they can't speak out about it? So it's a very concerning thing. I know you had Alex Newman on last week. I heard that one, and he's sort of talking about this on another level. So they use all these little hooks to go after people, and it's all nonsense. So and it's hard when you try to stay grounded in reality and truth. Every now and then I think I'm losing my mind because what I'm seeing going on can't really be real.
Well, you wouldn't have thought so a few years ago. It's just so topsy-turvy compared to what it once was. And going back to the UK, with those people that have been arrested for saying little things like that. But what happens to those people that, the Islamic ones that have been marching down the street with axes and knives? Do they get prosecuted, or is that justifiable?
Well, I think that there's a concerted global effort. I really wish I had the ability to piece all of this together into sort of like I'm trying to think like the formula that solves everything, that helps us understand and that explains everything that's going on. And I'm not sure I'll ever get there, because they always seem to be adapting. It's like it's multi-headed Hydra.
Yeah.
And they just they're just pushing everything, and they're very open in their agenda now. I think Alex talked about it. I know he's talking about have an article open here by a guy named Jacob Nordengard at the Pharaoh's Chronicles. The ultimate goal of the Pact of the Future, a planet technocracy to manage global crises on behalf of the global corporatocracy. So that's what Patrick Woods talked about quite a bit. That's Alex Newman's talked about it, other people. And they're moving forward. So in a month, in a month, I guess now just about exactly a month, they'll be in New York City at the UN for the
Pact for the Future.
The Council for the
Pact,
Future.
Yeah.
And they're going to supposedly sign one of the drafts of this Pact of the Future. But they've been working on this, as Jacob Nordengard says in his article at Pharaoh's Chronicles. They've been working on this for decades. And now it's all coming to fruition. And it just seems kind of strange that it's all coming to fruition when all these other crises are coming about, what they refer to as the polycrises.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting time, but it's also very troubling. So I'm looking here. Here's a thing from UN 75 back in September of 2020, and it's called Global Governance Forum. Well, what was going on back in September of 2020? And so they're using medical, they're using climate, they're using cultural things to just tear everything down. It's pretty amazing to watch. Troubling, but amazing.
I guess, behind it all, we have to realize there is a mastermind. I mean, there are human masterminds, I'm sure what I would call illuminists, but above them, you have our mastermind who has been around for millennia. That's Satan. And it's ultimately his global government plan, which the Bible talks about. We're going to see the book of Revelation, the mark of the beast and all that. We don't know exactly how quickly it's going to happen or whatever, but it's certainly ramping up. And so we're faced with a world that has all this going on. So looking to probably wrap up soon, I guess, John, as Christians, we are faced with this and many, many other things we could have mentioned. But how do we, or how should we handle it? What should we do?
Well, I think people need to be informed. You need to inform yourself and pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah.
You need to, I do think you need to prepare yourself spiritually. You need to be in the Word. You need to be in a regular prayer life, committed to God thing, because I do think you need to be in association with other believers, just for no other reason than for them to affirm that you're not losing your mind. That there are other people that think this way. And I do think you need to prepare somewhat physically. And I know that's difficult for people. Every time I talk about that, people say, well, I'm on a fixed income. And I get that, so I don't know, buy ramen noodles and soup and, frozen soup and that type of thing, because we don't really know. I mean, there are a lot of indications that we're going to be in a major crisis in the next few months, maybe in a very severe global war. That's possible. I certainly, as we look through Bible prophecy, we're supposed to expect these things. And I know there's the hope that the Lord will rescue us out of here before any of this gets too bad. But and I'm not here to argue or not for a particular view on the timing of a rescue, but I have suggested the question is, what's going to happen before the Lord comes? And my answer is at least everything you've seen so far, and just extrapolate a little bit. And, Tony, it's interesting because 4 years ago, 5 years ago, were we really talking about this?
Not anywhere near this level.
Right. I mean, look, we all had ideas about how it might come about, but there have been some gigantic curveballs that they've thrown. And now, now we see this Mpox thing that they're declaring an emergency on. And so you need to inform yourself. So, for example, there's the thing about the bird flu. So I listened to some doctors that talked about last week. They did a seminar on the bird flu and how do you treat it? How dangerous is it? Is it transmissible? And the answer is it's not really transmissible. It's not been proven to be transmitted from human to human. And the treatment, by the way, is the same for any other coronavirus. The same things that people recommended that you do with regard to what we refer to as Charlie Vector 019er are the same things to do for this other one. So you need to inform yourself about those things, but really, if you can't find a group of believers, find a church, talk about these things, share things. If you can afford to buy some extra stuff, because you may need to have some stuff to help your friends. Let me give you an example. So we don't have time to talk about it, but in the Middle East, they have major problems. They're having water problems in many countries, and now they're having electricity problems. In Lebanon, all the central power company shut everything off last weekend. Everything. So unless you're hooked up to a private generator in Lebanon, you don't have any electricity. And they're talking that to get the grid back could take many months to do that. So the question you always have to ask yourself is, how do I live without that?
Yeah.
And you need to think through that, because I think you have a responsibility to take care of yourself. So I just think, prepare yourself spiritually, mentally, and physically for some difficult times. That's my advice. And that's just not a platitude. That's something you really need to do, some of those things.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also sharing podcasts like this and, to people, to wake people up as well. It's always helpful to do that. So, and obviously you have regular podcasts too. So, John, where do people find your updates?
Well, I'm on YouTube at Fellowship Bible Chapel, or just my name. I also do fairly regular interviews. Of course, I am a supporter of Israel. I think everybody knows that. I interview people from Israel. I talk to people in Israel quite a bit. I've done interviews with people. They're in a very, very difficult situation over there. Regardless of what you think, that it's a very difficult situation. And they're fighting at least a 7, 8, 9, or 10 front war in Israel right now. And it's very serious. So pay attention to what's going over there, because that has a tendency to bleed over and affect everything else that's going on. So Fellowship Bible Chapel on YouTube, Rumble, it's Real FBC. I think John Haller 54 on Twitter, Getter, True Social, Telegram. I don't post a lot. I do most of my stuff through videos, and we also do some roundtables. So I do some tech roundtables about once a month with Scott Townsend, Patrick Wood, Brid Gillette. Sometimes Tom Hughes joins us to just talk about what's going on in the tech world. Tony, there are so many things going on so many different levels. I have 5 windows open on my one browser right now, and I could talk for hours about each one of them because of and if I start drilling down into all the different levels. So just find some good, solid people and listen to them. There are plenty of them out there.
And also, folks, don't forget our website, aminutetomidnight.com, and our YouTube channel, Rumble, BitChute, and Apple Podcast channel. Okay, John, well, I think we'll leave it at that today. I'm saying there's so many more things we could go on, but I want to say thank you for today. And, yeah, we should come back and maybe continue maybe in the next couple of weeks. So thanks.
I have a feeling that we can continue the conversation on any number of topics.
Yes, I think so. So we'll do it again soon, John.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.